I'm pretty sure you all know that I'm a small government guy. What small government means to me, at least economically, is that you should keep most of what you earn and that you yourself are the best arbiter to decide where your money goes.
Dave, that's just begging the question. It's not as if American lefties want to tax people at 90%, right? It's a matter of degree. This is just dishonest framing of an issue. Nobody supports taxation for its own sake, goddammit! If you want to reduce taxes, you have to find things you want to cut. People who want to maintain or raise the current level of taxation are not saying they just want to have higher taxes because they want people to have less money. They're saying, I want a government that does X, Y, and Z, and we gotta pay for it somehow. We have to levy taxes to pay for the programs that are needed, whether it's the military, healthcare, education, what have you.
Whether the money you earn goes to fixing your house or buying a new car or to funding Planned Parenthood and supporting Lincoln Center.
Obviously, there are situations where government spending is necessary. The fact of the matter is, there are many things that only government can provide. Take roads, for example. A road is a public good. Everyone benefits when there's a road that goes from point A to point B. Anyone can drive on it because it's a public road. But think about it. No one person actually has the incentive to build a road because they would be taking up all the cost, but the benefit they would derive would be the same as every other member of the public. They have a huge incentive to be a free rider, wait for somebody else to build the road, and then pay nothing. Dave is so fundamentally dishonest in comparing things like your car, your private property, and things that are public goods, like roads, healthcare for the poor, the military. Most of the things your tax dollars go to, by the way. Now, obviously, there's a robust discussion to be had here. People who are liberals tend to see healthcare as a public good. They tend to see a welfare state as a public good. Whereas libertarians tend to see roads as a public good. Bridges, the military, a court system. Those are things that pretty much everyone considers a public good. Things that just can't be a matter of voluntary private transaction. But the question is where you draw the line. Dave is totally skirting around that issue and pretending that people on the left just demand that the government control everything. That's not true.
I believe that should be up to you. You've worked hard for your money, I assume, and I believe that you're a better judge of how to spend it rather than giving it to a wasteful government, which will often spend it on programs that you don't even care about.
Well, let's just clarify one thing here. A wasteful government is bad. What a freaking insight, Dave. How did you figure out that wasting money was a bad thing? That's such a controversial, interesting point. I mean, come on, man. I'm pretty damn sure that nobody wants the government to waste money. Nobody wants that. If someone believes the government should do something, by definition, they believe it's not wasteful. They're saying it's a net benefit because they want the government to do it. A Republican is not saying, hey, let's go build an aircraft carrier. It's really wasteful. Yay! A Democrat is not saying, let's go waste a bunch of money on welfare. No, they're saying that those things are necessary. Let's actually have an argument on the merits of the question. He's taking advantage of the fact that he's being so vague, so abstract. He's not taking a position on Trump's healthcare bill, Trump's budget proposal. He's saying things like, freedom is good and wasting money is bad. Well, no shit, Sherlock. This exposes the fuzzy hypocrisy of Dave's whole shtick about big ideas. Your big ideas are nothing more than stupid cliches that you use to placate the right. I've got a big idea for you. Try reading a newspaper now and then, huh? Go find an actual news source that is not InfoWars or Mike Cernovich and read about what's going on in the world. And then cite some facts in your next video, instead of spouting this vague pablum about ideas and freedom and small government, okay?
At the same time, being for small government isn't only about taxes and economics. At its root, being for small government is also about being for the individual. I believe that your faculty to understand how you want to live is far better than anyone else's faculty on how you should live your life. At the same time, I understand the need for the government is different depending on whether you live in a rural area or an urban center, for example. In a rural area with less people, there is most likely less of a need for regulation than there is in an urban area. Take something as simple as a noise ordinance. If you live in a remote rural area in the middle of the country, there is most likely no need for a law to stop people from doing construction in the middle of the night or blasting their music too loudly. But if you live in an urban center, say New York City, where people live in small apartments on top of one another, a noise ordinance might be important to you. You can't have construction people knocking down walls at all hours of the night, and you might not want your neighbor blasting music at 3 a.m.
Yeah, sure. Nobody is saying we need to have the exact same laws cover every square inch of the United States of America.
The next piece of the limited government puzzle is whether or not the government needs to be involved in so many facets of our lives at all. Even in the case of New York City with its cramped conditions and tiny living spaces, is it the government who has to tell companies not to do construction in the middle of the night or tenants not to blast music at ungodly hours? This is where an interesting discussion can happen. Is it the job of the government, as laid out by the Constitution, which I think we're still governed by, to regulate these interpersonal issues?
So let me get this straight. Dave Rubin thinks the federal government has created federal noise ordinances for cities, and these ordinances violate the Constitution? Is that it? What the hell is he even talking about? Well, for one thing, it kind of goes without saying that a municipality is not exercising federal power with a noise ordinance. They're exercising the state police power delegated to their municipal government.
Or is it the job of individuals to deal with these issues themselves? Should a building in New York City have a policy about noise instead of leaving it to the government? Should it be incumbent on you to talk to your neighbor about the volume of their music rather than leaving it to the government? Can issues we think of traditionally being dealt with by the government actually be dealt with in the private sector? Or is the government already too deep into controlling us that we could never scale it back without burning down the system?
I'm just thinking right now, what is the point of this video? What is the point of this editorial that's so vague that it doesn't even make any point at all? Is it just the need for hashtag content? Does he think this is good? But I digress. The answer to his question here is actually pretty obvious. What he's talking about is the classic problem of a nuisance. Your neighbor is doing something on their property that affects you on your property. Whether it's they're burning their garbage and making your house smell bad, or they're playing their music at all hours of the night, or maybe your neighbor is a factory pumping out toxic pollution. Well, caveat, obviously if you can go to your neighbor and say, please stop, and they stop, there's no reason for the government to be involved at all. Everyone agrees on that. Nobody thinks that the first action you take should be sending a government SWAT team to your neighbor to turn off their radio. The question is, what happens if they refuse? Well, in libertarian land, they would have you make a voluntary arrangement. You could make a contract. I'll pay you $100 a month and you don't play your music. But just think about where that would go. If there's no noise ordinance at all, and you can collect a bribe if you make a lot of noise and piss people off, you have a huge incentive to get a bribe by pissing people off. Society can't function like that. And it makes you wonder, when this stuff is so blatantly ridiculous, why is Dave pushing this extreme libertarian line? What is going on here?
While noise ordinances aren't the most pressing issue out there, obviously, I use it as a simple example of the battle between the private and the public, and how sometimes we assign power to the government when perhaps there could be a better option based in our own capacity to reason for ourselves. With all this in mind, we're continuing our partnership with Learn Liberty this week. And
wait, what's Learn Liberty?
So what does it mean to learn liberty?
Well, that's not exactly what I was asking.
Hey, I'm Peter Jaworski.
Nice hair, dude.
You can find me where I teach at Georgetown University. Learn Liberty works with professors like me to untangle complicated ideas and issues, show why they matter, and see how they affect you.
Me?
You can learn about economics, philosophy, history.
Okay, let's cut the bullshit. Learn Liberty is a project of the Institute for Humane Studies, a libertarian think tank. One of their main influences was this guy, Murray Rothbard. Murray Rothbard was an Austrian economist, and I don't mean he was from Austria. Austrian economics is an economic school of thought that is very thinly subscribed among actual economists, but very popular in the far right. Perhaps the most famous proponent of these ideas is former Texas Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul. So if you want a quick heuristic for understanding their philosophy, think of the extreme philosophy of Ron Paul that he advanced in his presidential campaign in 2012 and 2008. These guys are the furthest thing from the left. They're not liberal, they're not close to centrist, they are far right. And who funds them? It turns out it's the Koch brothers. It's the Richard Mellon Scaife Foundation. It's a bunch of right-wing libertarian industrialists who want to pollute the planet and enrich themselves. Dave is carrying water for the Koch brothers. He's being incredibly dishonest to claim he's on the left at this point. If anyone out there can look at that video of Dave spouting right-wing libertarian nonsense and then hear that he's working with the Koch brothers and think, well, this guy's on the left, he's a centrist, I'm sorry, you've lost your mind. This ought to settle it once and for all. Dave Rubin is a conservative. He's on the right, and he's not, quote-unquote, cleaning up his own side. He's attacking his ideological opponents. This dishonest act where Dave Rubin pretends to be on the left, pretends to be a liberal, has totally worn out its welcome. It's over, Dave. Admit it. You're on the right.